Ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Srinivas, Dr. Herren, Mr. Beiermann, Dr. Krall, Mrs. Gehrke, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Bonn and welcome to Bonn's Old Town Hall. It's a very special pleasure for me to be with you here today. My name is Reinhard Limbach, I'm Deputy Mayor of Bonn. I have learned from Mayor Nimsch that cooperation between the Right Livelihood College and the city of Bonn has developed quite well over the years, entering its fifth year already. Unfortunately, Mayor Nimsch could not make it himself since he's busy with the delegates of the UNFCCC climate negotiations tonight, but he asked me to convey his best regards to all of you. I know that it has become a good tradition in Bonn to receive the laureates of the Right Livelihood Award and other experts at our Old Town Hall. For us, it's a true honor to have you here. Since 2010, we have had the opportunity of welcoming numerous laureates here, impressive personalities working on practical solutions for the most pressing issues of our time. Thank you. Thanks to the good relations with the Right Livelihood Award Foundation, we have become quite involved with the Right Livelihood family, as I may call it. This happened for the first time in 2010, when we jointly organized the 30th anniversary conference here. At this point, a warm welcome to Sharon Srinivas from the Right Livelihood Award Foundation in Stockholm, who is with us tonight. Welcome. Over the past 4 years, the work of the Bonn campus of the Right Livelihood College has continuously brought laureates to Bonn, promoting the exchange with students and postgraduates. RLC and the city of Bonn have joined hands to organize this event, to reach out and offer Bonn citizens a chance to experience these inspiring personalities and an interesting and encouraging discussion. We are very happy that here in Bonn we are able to offer a platform where laureates, experts, and engaged citizens can meet and discuss issues of our time. Very often, Bonn has been called an ideal place for meetings like these, offering an atmosphere of tolerance and providing a platform of future-oriented dialogue. Just last week, we had an inspiring debate with citizens from very different backgrounds in this hall. We discussed the National Development Agenda, the so-called Zukunftscharta. During this debate, Mayor Nimsch said, "The world was saved from Bonn." And although he said it with a wink, there's a grain of truth in it, indeed. In Bonn, there are more than 1,000 staff of the UN working towards sustainable development worldwide, as well as federal ministries, international organizations, scientific research institutions, and more than 150 internationally oriented non-governmental organizations. A sustainable hub has developed here on the banks of the Rhine. Many declarations bear Bonn in their name and have sent impulses from here into the global debate. Today's discussion on how to feed the world is another fine example for a very pressing issue that many organizations in Bonn and the region are working on. The report on the state of food insecurity in the world 2015, published by FAO, IFAD and WFP just last week, was commented on immediately, also from our Bonn-based organizations. It will be very interesting to listen to the 3 experts who are here with us today. I also hope all of you here today, and especially the PhD students participating in the international workshop in the course of the week, will experience the culture of the Bonn dialogue. And I wish our international guests are at the RLC a very inspiring week and some food for thought to take home. Last not least, let me also extend a word of thanks to the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development, as well as to the German Academic Exchange Service, which supported this event and assisted us in making this dialogue space possible. I wish all of us a very inspiring evening. Thank you very much.
Good evening. Reinhard Limbach, Deputy Mayor, City of Bonn. Hans Herren, 2013 Right Livelihood Laureate. Distinguished panelists, ladies and gentlemen, my dear friends. 5 years ago, this lovely city had its first encounter with the Right Livelihood Award when, as the Deputy Mayor said, it hosted the 30th anniversary conference of what's known as the Alternative Nobel Prize. And it was nothing short of love at first sight. As a city known for its promotion of international cooperation, warmly embraced the Right Livelihood Award family, which is now a galaxy of 158 inspiring individuals and organizations from 65 countries. The fruits of this first encounter have multiplied manifold over these years. In 2011, the Center for Development Research at the University of Bonn became the first Right Livelihood College campus in Germany. It has since risen to become the real jewel in the crown of our 7 Right Livelihood College campuses around the world. It has been supporting every year one PhD student working to research laureates' issues and topics in a scientific manner. Additionally, RLC Bonn has hosted 2 workshops every year, bringing laureates, scientists, students to discuss how we can analyze factors better and understand issues such as social mobilization for change and empowerment of the marginalized. This week, I understand that PhD students from over a dozen countries will participate in a workshop with Hans Herren to discuss the very urgent issue of food security and sustainable agriculture. The Right Livelihood College's Global Secretariat moved to ZEF in May 2014 in recognition of RLC Bonn's consistently splendid achievements. And I want to name some of the many individuals and institutions that have contributed to this journey. These results could not have been achieved without the unequivocal and long-standing support of the Lord Mayor, Gehrke, and all the officials and staff of the City of Bonn, who have kindly hosted several Right Livelihood College events, including the inauguration of the Global Secretariat in May last year. I would also like to especially thank the German Academic Exchange Service for their very generous financial support towards both RLC Bonn's activities and the academic scholarships that they have supported over this time. And finally, I would like to recognize the commitment of the leadership of the University of Bonn and the Center of Development Research, particularly Prof. Solveig Gehrke, and the hard work of my dear friends, Dr. Till Stellmacher and Timo Pokraka, who have ensured that RLC events and programs have always been of a consistently high standard, and together ensure that RLC Bonn continues to be an incubator, catalyst, and multiplier of innovative solutions to the world's most intractable global problems. One such complex question is the topic of today's public panel discussion: who will feed the world? Which raises the interlinked challenges of population growth, business, sustainability, and poverty. These challenges are not insurmountable, As Hans and the other panelists will probably tell us, sustainable solutions are out there. If only we care to promote them and expose the narrow vested interests that are recklessly hurtling our world towards the opposite direction and a grim future. With that, on behalf of the Right Livelihood Award Foundation and the Right Livelihood College, I would like to welcome you all to this panel discussion. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Reinhard Limbach, Deputy Mayor of the City of Bonn, and Sharan Srinivas on behalf of the Right Livelihood Award Foundation for your warm welcoming words to this evening conference to debate, I think, one of the most urgent and maybe difficult challenges humanity has to face, not just in the future, but since right now, who will feed the world? Ladies and gentlemen, before we start our discussion, may I please ask you and remind you to switch off your mobile phones or switch them to mute in order to not interrupt our discussion. And before we start presenting our subject, may I invite our distinguished guests to come in front and take your seats, please, so that we can start our discussion round. Welcome. Ladies and gentlemen, who will feed the world is the topic for this evening, and it's about thinking how to deal with the growing world population. 9 billion people will live on this planet by 2050. And right now, for the year 2014, the United Nations Food and Agriculture Organization estimates that about 1 in 9 people in the world is suffering from chronic undernourishment. That is more than 800 million people in the world. And almost all the hungry people in the world are living in developing countries. So that's one important figure we will have to deal with this evening. Another interesting figure may be the World Bank estimates that until the year 2030 already, the demand for food will increase by 50%. With reference to the year 2009. So it seems obvious that agricultural production needs not only to be substantially increased, but also modified. And this is the question we will try to talk about this evening. And that's why I'm glad to be able to present our distinguished guests. Dr. Hans Rudolf Herren, he's biologist and agricultural scientist and Right Livelihood Award Laureate of the year 2013. He's the president of the Millennium Institute based in Washington, D.C., and founder and president of the Biovision Foundation. As to the nutrition of humanity in the future, he was asked, and he says, agroecological, eco-efficient, and organic agriculture are the only approaches that will be able to nourish a world population of some 9 to 10 billion people in the face of climate change, natural resource scarcity, and growing demand challenges. Mr. Hans Herren, welcome. Timo Beiermann, he's a geographer and works currently as a consultant for FIAN, that's the Food First Information and Action Network, an NGO that campaigns for the right to food and nutrition. And he believes that the conventional and profit-oriented agriculture harms food security by destroying soils and social perspectives of peasants. Welcome, Mr. Beiermann. And to my right, Dr. Stephan Krall. He's a biologist. He worked 8 years in Togo and Benin in plant and post-harvest protection projects for GIZ. And currently he's heading the Competence Center in GIZ on agricultural production and resource use. So the GIZ is the Society for International Cooperation, a federal enterprise that works on behalf of the Ministry of Federal Cooperation. And Dr. Krall, he's convinced that sustainable agriculture has many faces and only one form of sustainable production is organic agriculture. Welcome, Dr. Krall. Hans Herren, before we talk about who will feed the world, let me start with some figures that lead us to the question how we are actually right in the present dealing with food already. Because according to UNEP, roughly 1/3 of the food production in the world gets lost. That's approximately 1.3 billion tons. It's wasted, it gets lost between the land and the markets. So is it first of all a matter of increasing agricultural production or thinking and rethinking about the food chain and about how we deal with food and reducing food waste?
Very good question, thank you. I think it hits the nail on the head. We do,
yes,
we do produce actually twice as much food today as we need. And I think we need to keep this in mind. Now the problem with that is it's not produced always in the right place, of the right kind, by the right people, and most certainly not in the right way. So I think we have to look at exactly, where do we have too much, where do we have too little? Is it up to Europe or North America to feed the world, or the local community to nourish themselves, I think is the question. And how to do that. And I think the solutions are many. And I think the fact that right now we realize more and more the wastage, just mentioned, 1/3. Actually, in developed countries, industrial countries, even more than 1/3. It's about 40 to 45%. Whereas in developing countries, certainly people cannot afford to throw away food, but there's many, many losses post and pre-harvest, and also during the processing or the road to the market where there's a lot of losses. But people don't waste food as they do basically in industrial countries, and that's a matter of just having the means. We have the means here to throw it away. It's so cheap.
So let me continue with your quotation. You mentioned, or there were several terms mentioned about agroecologic, organic, and eco-efficient agriculture. What are the differences, or what is the main differences between these three concepts you mentioned?
Yeah, this is actually very interesting also, because I think we need to say, okay, what is the alternative model of agriculture, or models of agriculture? And sure, there's a number of practices which would come sort of under the main heading of agroecology. I mean, that has been there for a while. The International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science and Technology, which is the mother of all the reports on agriculture, which has lined out exactly what the world should be doing to change agriculture, transform it. Actually said that, we need to move toward agroecology, which means an agriculture which follows the principles of ecology, the ecological principles. Be in harmony with the system. So basically be out there and not work against what we have, what nature has given us, but with it. An agriculture which promotes ecosystem services, for example. Now again, within or below this agroecology, you can have organic, there's biodynamic, regenerative. There's a number of practices which all have their pluses and minuses, but all of them will not the out-yield, but they're really, I think, in terms of sustainability, are basically way above or beyond what sort of the green evolution type agriculture, what we call conventional or industrial, is doing. And I think a good measure for all this is that when you look at the industrial food system, which is production all the way sort of to consumption, producing almost half, or something even more than half of the greenhouse gases, clearly we cannot continue there. We need an alternative. And not only on the production side, but the whole food chain, including the consumption. That's why we start to speak more and more now about food systems and not only just production. Because farmers actually are very often producing what people are buying. I mean, what's the point to grow more organic if people don't buy it, for example? Or with any other practice. And we have actually a big problem there. We know when you look at this sort of alternative agriculture, of people say, no, but the world cannot afford it. There's a lot of poor people in the world, so they cannot afford expensive food. That all this organic and food out of alternative production is only for the rich. This is total nonsense. Because actually the cheap food is expensive. It has been so expensive that it is bankrupting our governments with the healthcare bills, with environmental cleanup behind it. So I think we need to start to think about what is cheap food and what is actually the more the food carries all its costs. And that's what we have to look forward to. And that can only be done under the agroecological banner, because that's where we start to include all the costs in any one of these different forms of sustainable agriculture. And I would like to say also that we need to exclude there one of them, which has been promoted lately quite a bit, is conservation agriculture using herbicides. I mean, you can have conservation agriculture which conserves soils, no plowing, that's fine. But if it's actually just based on the use of herbicide, like it is in most cases, then that doesn't belong under the agroecological practices.
Thank you. Dr. Krall, when you say that organic agriculture is just one phase or one form of sustainable agriculture, where do you see the limits of organic agriculture, and what are the other phases and forms of sustainable agriculture?
It's important in my eyes to say that there are not only the two poles. On the one hand, the agro-food system and industrial agriculture, and on the other hand, organic agriculture. What we support is a system of sustainable agriculture. And sustainability is not only ecological sustainability, but as well economic, social, and as well political participation. That is a sustainable system. And quite often organic systems are not sustainable in the sense that they are not economically viable. There are many farmers here in Germany which practice organic agriculture in a form that is not economically viable, and then it is not a sustainable system. What we want is that farmers can live on what they produce, and not only subsistence farmers, but farmers which can sell their products, earn money to send children to school, to improve their health, etc. And insofar, there are many different forms of sustainable agriculture, and the term agroecology, which Hans uses, is in my eyes a science. Agroecology is a science on the agro-ecosystems and not a production method. And that we have to respect the ecosystem in which we produce our crops. That is, for me, natural. That's normal. That we should do that, but it's not a production method. And what I think is that there is a limitation of organic agriculture, and we should not be dogmatic. We should really site-specific decide which form of agriculture is the right one. And that includes the political context, that includes the access to markets, the availability of inputs. If I use mechanization in agriculture, I must assure that there are enough spare parts and so on, maintenance, all these. And then I can decide which form of agriculture is the right one. And coming back to the conservation agriculture, I have nothing against herbicides. So if I practice, I've been recently in Paraguay in a project on conservation agriculture, and they use herbicides. Why not? What is bad with herbicides? So I mean, we should not be dogmatic. We have to feed the world in 20, 30, 50 years with 9 or 10 billion people, and we should use all available methods which guarantee a sustainable agriculture. And organic has its limit in yields, etc. And last word, maybe, yes, maybe there's enough food actually in the world. And if we could reduce losses after harvest to zero, then we have even more. But we cannot reduce losses to zero, Hans knows that. And in maybe 20 years, there's not enough food for everybody in the world. There are different figures around. Some say we need 70% more than today. Others say we need 50% more. But most of them say we need to produce more than today.
Thank you so much for this first statement. Mr. Beiermann, you said profit-oriented agriculture harms food security. Let me quote from the IFPRI report 2014. This report says, public policy should support small family farmers in either moving up to commercially oriented and profitable farming systems or moving out of agriculture to seek non-farm employment opportunities. So, from your point of view, what's the problem with commercial-oriented agriculture, with profit-oriented agriculture?
Yeah, I guess maybe that's a model working in the European countries or in Northern America. But you have to see in the global south, that small farmers are the backbone of the society. They will sustain the whole society with food. And if this function is getting lost, there are more crises, and you will see results as migration. And I guess also smallholders are the backbone in society, sort of participating in decisions. They are a form of civil structure that forces or that stabilizes the state. So I guess it's not an option to turn all smallholders who are not productive out of the value chain, because there are also very various models like that farmers are working in part-time, so they have a basic stock for living, and maybe the husband is working in another area, having a regular job, and maybe women are in charge to feed the family. So, and I experienced from my work in Indonesia that even smallholders, or just having 5 hectares, they could sustain a family by cocoa farms when the prices were much higher, and they were able to send their children to a university.
But nevertheless, when we talk about those who suffer from hunger in the developing countries, it's people in the rural areas, those smallhold farmers who are mostly affected and vulnerable and affected by hunger and malnutrition. So how can we manage to solve, first of all, that problem, that those who produce food are affected or most affected by malnutrition and hunger, and how can we charge them with the responsibility of feeding the world? Do you see this problem?
Sure. I guess often it's the access to knowledge and to finance to improve. For smallholders, it's a big problem. And for sure, we see actually, or we saw in the past few years, that there was a big run on agricultural land in the global south that triggered also conflicts. And I think this is one of the biggest problems and challenges, because if food production is commercialized, maybe we lose the base for feeding the world. Even smallholders, even if they are, if they don't hold the great estates, they have a big portion, I guess, around 50%, and producing food.
Okay, so smallholders are the backbone for the for their local markets, for themselves, I think, for the local economy. But nevertheless, Herren, when we look at situations in Africa, for example, where land is splitted up between the 2 or 3 sons of a family, so it's becoming much more difficult from generation to live from the soil. How could you face this problem, or would it even be better to motivate some people to get out of agriculture in order to consolidate small farming?
Yeah, that's actually this urban or rural-urban migration is a problem, because what do people do, and why do they actually migrate? It's not only because farms get smaller. I mean, that's only a small part of the problem, because some people will live anyway. But I think we need to change the way we invest money in rural areas, and not only in agriculture. And we have shown through some work we have done in a number of countries that you need to invest around agriculture, in the value chain, in the countryside. Not so all the processing has to be done in towns, but we have to actually revive the rural areas. So we have to invest in schools, in healthcare, in the rural areas. If not, people will leave. In many places in Africa, you can see migration. People rather go to live in a slum because there the schools and the healthcare is better than in rural areas. So we need to change the way, not only in agriculture, but also around agriculture. Again, that means you have to have better infrastructure, you have to have access to power so they can actually process food, and so instead of letting it go bad. So there's a lot of investment around agriculture in we call it the sort of what's in the investment around agriculture to make agriculture itself work. And so some people go out of agriculture. We need mechanization. Nobody says that organic agriculture is without mechanization, my friend. You know, that's actually a big deal. We need to mechanize, but we don't need those huge mega machinery, but we need machinery which is appropriate, which will take care of the soil, where we can do conservation agriculture without herbicides. It's been shown, it's been done in many places. So, but that means investment in also mechanization, which means that some of the people from the land will become mechanics, some will sell the machines. So you can see all of a sudden a whole transformation of the society. And it has to be done. So again, investment in and around agriculture, but not our model of agriculture, always bigger, depending on non-renewable resources. When again, and you know, I spent 27 years there, non-stop, and we have shown through a lot of the work we have done that you can transform the smallholder farmers, which actually is begging for food, into a producer who has enough to sell on the market for himself and then for the people in the country. And I can tell you that it is not about Europe or America to feed the world. No, I mean, I really object to this idea that some in other continents we have to produce more than necessary to ruin the markets in the south. This has been happening all along. We know it. It's been written down. But when we know that down there in the south, in the European countries, people can produce enough, even if in Africa alone they would double the production. And I can tell you this can be done almost overnight if we invest in the farmers, education, in the women. That doesn't take too much money. It can be done, and then there's already more than enough. What we need to do is stop to actually try to sell our stuff down there. Look at Europe and the chicken issue, the onions, just the milk, I mean, the powder. I mean, there's 100,000 examples of things which are done wrong. And then what we do here, we import the equivalent of France's agriculture area in proteins from Argentina, ruining the life of thousands of people down there, taking their land away. For what? For having access to cheap food. You know, where is it written? In what constitution that people have access or a God-given right to cheap food? That's exactly what's happening here. And that's why that model of agriculture we have in America, in Europe, is doomed, because it doesn't include all the externalities. We need to start to talk about true pricing in all this. And then you will see that the organic or the regenerative agriculture, or whatever is called sustainable agriculture, and those products they already include a lot of the externalities, not all, but that's why it's more expensive. And we need to stop actually taxing the good food, where we know that we don't use chemicals which are deleterious to our health and the environment. Why do we have to pay more? Because that has to be certified. Why don't we certify all the other stuff which is poisoning us? Oh, this macaroni have been sprayed, on the wheat have been sprayed with chemicals. This has been grown with herbicides. That's what we need to put on the package. And not because we and you, I'm sure, all expect them. When you go into a restaurant, when you go into a shop, whatever you buy is safe, right? As you know, it is not safe. Most of it has residues, which nobody even know how even determined the levels, which vary from country to country even sometimes. You know, I think we really need a proper analysis of the food system and change it here in particular so that it can change also in the south.
Dr. Krall, you mentioned the example from Paraguay where you worked with herbicides and you said what's wrong or what's bad about them. Taking into account what Herren says, that it should be necessary to calculate a real price of food produced under such conditions, employing herbicides, etc. Then what is the advantage of using herbicides when you should calculate it to a real price?
I mean, we should, first of all, we should understand farming as a business. That's always a misunderstanding if we discuss with NGOs. Farming is a business. We allow each baker and carpenter to make profit. But if we talk about profit in agriculture, Many people say, no, that's nothing where we have to talk about profit. For sure, it's a business in Europe, it's a business in the Americas, and it is a business in Africa. And we should respect every farmer as a businessman. And we should, if we try to help him with projects or however, we should try to help him to improve his business. And business means earning money. And then he is in a competition with different farming systems. And for sure, Hans, it's correct to internalize the costs of the environment. That's absolutely correct. But on the other hand, a farmer is in competition. And if we look at the figures worldwide, there's only 1% organic agriculture, certified organic agriculture. And most of it is grassland and pasture. So it's a minimum. More than 99% is what we call conventional agriculture, but it's a broad spectrum of types of agriculture. And a farmer is always in this competition. And for sure, if I start to give inputs, knowledge inputs in a system where the baseline is very low, let's say in the Sahel in Africa, I can improve the system with nearly any knowledge input, as well organic as other systems, conservation, agriculture, etc. But then immediately the farmer, which we convince, for example, to produce in an organic way, is in competition with the neighboring farmer producing in a conventional way. And if he brings his crops to the markets, he don't get more money for it. It's only here in Europe where we are willing to pay more for certified organic food, but it's not the case in Africa. If I go to the market, I get exactly the same price, whether it is organically produced or with herbicides or insecticides and fertilizer. And then if my extension service is teaching systems which allow fertilizer input, pesticide input, herbicide input, machinery, etc., those farmers have even a higher productivity than the organic farmers. And so far it is right, if I take now the low level of productivity and I give only the input of organic farming, then I can maybe double the yields. But if I give an input which allows a little bit more, like fertilizer, pesticides, etc., then I maybe can triple the yields. And then I'm in a competition. And then I would like to see those farmers who go to the markets with only half of the yield as a neighboring farmer. He will very quickly change his system.
Let me quote another Right Livelihood Award-Laureate, Vandana Shiva, who said a good farmer is not just producing food but conserving the land. So when you talk about the use of herbicide and pesticide, that's an ecological problem, I dare say. So how could you just come out of this trap, of this problem between increasing the necessity of increasing agricultural production and conserving the environment? Mr. Beile, what's your experience from Indonesia, and what would be your proposal, maybe?
So in Indonesia, I experienced that farmers used pesticides, and even experts said, oh, in Europe it's already forbidden. And they were asking us what might be problems, and of course it's cancer. It's people were facing that many people are having cancer with 50s, maybe it's also a diet or a society change, but there are impacts of this agriculture, and even if it's also not done in a proper way, and I guess we can't expect a farmer who attended maybe a 4-year school or has just a basic education to work with such complex instruments like pesticides, and I guess it's quite critical and a little bit sad. And I guess food is a basic right, and it should be more in front than just being a profit good, because I see if some developments are proceeding, there are examples where big investments were done, that the conflicts will rise. And of course, there were many people forced to live in slums, and because in many countries in the global south there is not enough land available. it's a scarce, as you mentioned, a source, because it's divided between sons, and I guess in big industrialized exporting agriculture is not it's not a part of any solution. It's a part of a big problem. And that's our development logic. That's still, too Eurocentric, Western-centric, whatever.
Okay, I think we yes.
I would like to say a word again to the use of pesticides. Quite often I do not understand the logic behind. Everybody accepts that if he is sick, he takes antibiotics or other medicaments directly, direct input. But if a plant is sick and I take a medicament which is called pesticide to help this plant, and indirectly a very small amount, if I do it correctly, a very small amount of this pesticide is found in the groundwater and I drink it, and I can, with these highly sophisticated analyzed methods, I can find it in my body, then it's bad, that's bad. But if I take directly medicament, it's good. It's the same with genetic engineering. If I produce medicaments with genetic engineering, nobody complains about it. But as soon as I use it for breeding plants, everybody complains. And that's what I do not understand, how this logic is.
Could the difference be that if I take an antibioticum, it's a very individual effect, and if I spray herbicide on a big land, it affects many people indirectly?
But do we live in a poison country? I'm happy to live in Germany, and millions of people want to come here. So if I go by bike through the landscape, it's beautiful, and I have not the impression that the whole country is poisoned, and we practice here this type of agriculture for hundreds of years. And so I understand if you use pesticides not in the correct way, then it can poison the environment, and that's bad. And that's why we practiced in our projects for more than 30 years IPM, integrated pest management, which uses pesticides as a last solution in a way which you should use them. That is our approach. But then you can use pesticides and herbicides. Nothing.
But which one?
Yeah, that's
the whole.
Is it
and actually, you see, the problem is that today's modern agriculture, all the inputs, I mean, you can go GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, it's all geared to treat a symptom of bad agricultural practices. Bottom line. That's what it is. No. Yes.
Yes, it is.
It is. We know, and we have done this many times. Stephan, I mean, look, we've been in Africa, you've been there also, and I've seen this, okay? I mean, if you grow a healthy plant, actually, and not one of these hybrid which has lost all its capacities to actually go get the nutrients, to react to insects, as we can measure today. We know many things today we didn't know even 10 years ago. So, and now we understand why we have some problems we didn't have times past. But we need to start to really research and understand the system, and then we take action. We don't do this symptom treatment. It's like for health. We do a lot of symptom treatment because that's business. That's good for business. To treat a problem at the cause, to remove it once and for all, is bad for business, right? Because you don't sell every day again. If you have a cancer, you take headache pills, boy, you can take all the pills until you are dead, right? It's not going to do anything for your cancer. And that's exactly what we do in agriculture, man. I mean, this is the problem. Why can't we actually spend more money? Look at how much money has been invested in agricultural research in the past 50 years, international or national, all in the idea of the green revolution, maximizing yields, not taking care of what's in those plants. We are producing empty calories these days, and for example. So that's where I think we need to now start to put the research also on the other side. I mean, in my own country, in Switzerland, just I learned this a few days ago, I didn't realize this is so bad, is that the government spends $4 million in organic agricultural research versus 170 in the conventional. And I guarantee you, if you go to Germany, it's probably not much different. The ratio between, tell me, first of all, how many research organizations do you have who deal with organic or, let's say, sustainable agriculture versus all the other stuff, right? For example. I mean, and then the industry, actually, where governments have abdicated their main responsibility in terms of agriculture. The research, the extension has to be a government issue, cannot be delegated to the private sector, because food, we heard it before, is a human right. Since when do you delegate human rights into the private sector? No, this is false. Private sector has a big role to play in agriculture, but they are not driving the car. Farmers need to, they have access to private sector for selling their products, but when it comes to advise them on inputs, for example, on what to do, frankly, I mean, you know, we know what happens with this system. I mean, anyone who is a private sector advisor to a farmer, what is he or she going to do? Sell their products, because that's how they get paid. I mean, this is normal. That's the system we live in. That's why we have governments, and governments cannot delegate a lot of these responsibilities, because in the end, the well-being of the citizen is a matter for the government to take care of. Health, food, the water, the air. I mean, you know, so certain things government has to take care of. They cannot just say, oh, that's somebody else's business. Sorry. Or delegate this to development aid, like we know in developing countries. No, these people need to make their own decisions on what they want. It's not up to us to design all these projects here and then tell them, oh, this is what you need to do. Let them sit together, look at the evidence, and choose. But right now, how many years? That's now 15 years after Paris Declaration saying that, you know, people should be empowered and government should be empowered to make their own decisions. It's still not happening the way it should.
So it's a matter of policy. You wanted to add something?
I would like to add that even if Germany is looking always very accurate and clean, but under the ground there are still problems. I knew from my home district that the groundwater bodies are in a very heavy state, and they have to find solutions. What will they do with the input of pesticides from agriculture? And yeah, it was just a reportage, but a feature on TV. I've seen that glyphosate, posed some heavy risks to animals. There were misbuildings from animals, and yeah, it's somehow, yeah, maybe it's not scientific research, but there's a big danger, I guess.
So what you say is we need stronger policies and the state to assume their responsibility. But I think there is another aspect which cannot be controlled by policy. That's consumption matters. People are demanding more meat and more dairy diets. So before we open up the discussion to the audience, how could you deal with this problem, the demand of more meat, which demands production of soy or grain to feed the animals, and that's a loss of energy as well. So is that a future development or future way of nutrition which we can really manage for 9 billion people in the future? What would you say?
Sure we can. I mean, since we produce today twice as much as we need, we could actually feed, not nourish, but let's say feed almost 14 billion people, right? Since we throw away half of it or lose it somewhere where we don't have to lose it. But I think the way, and you know, I've been thinking a lot about this since we did this big report on agriculture. So how do you transform it? You know, what is the leverage point? And in the end, I think there's only one. It's the wallet. And so if we have true costing, and people are working on this right now, when your meat costs €2 per kilogram, it's wrong. It should be at least 25. We add all the cost in it. People will stop eat meat like they do today. They would maybe choose meat from grass-fed beef. So you take a smaller piece, it's healthy, and everybody's happy. Now what we do, we destroy huge tract of land all over the world to have more cheap meat, which makes people sick. A lack of balance between omega-3 and omega-6. I mean, the ones who have studied this know that all. So we know it. So true pricing on everything, not only the food, but everything we consume, will actually put things straight. But we cannot continue to have society carry the costs of a few who overdo it. How long can you do that? You can't, and that's what we're doing today. So I think true pricing and true cost, it's not an easy thing to do, but there's a number of people right now, FAO and others, are getting into this and say, okay, what is the real cost we should charge? And then we forget about all the certification costs for organic and whatever other sustainable agricultural products, because that adds costs which are not needed. So things get be set straight. And people will have to stop thinking that, you know, food should cost only between 6 and 10% of their income in developed countries, whereas in the developing countries, people spend 50, 60% of their income for food. And here, even 6%, I mean, I can go look at my own people in my own country who cross the border to buy cheaper food when actually they spend only 6% of their income to eat. So why is it that we have in our head that food has to be cheap? Lack of respect for the farmers, lack of respect for the environment, lack of respect even for themselves, because, I mean, you ruin your own health. And we know all this. We still continue to do it. So I think the wallet is the leverage point to change the system.
So that would be your thesis about it's a business.
Yeah, exactly, and I agree completely with Hans. But I would say one thing, what we discussed before on the ecosystem. Agriculture is changing every ecosystem dramatically. Whether it is organic or any other form of agriculture, it's not longer ecosystem. And it's a dream to believe that there is a natural equilibrium in this agriculture system. It's not longer natural. If we plant these sweet grasses like maize and others, it attracts definitely insects in masses. And I have to do something about it. And I can't hope that there will, after a while, a natural equilibrium in such a kind of an agricultural system. The equilibrium will be only 5% of the current yields if I don't do anything. Because the natural system we had at the beginning 10,000 years ago in agriculture, people went around and picked up some grains, and that was in an equilibrium. And then they started to intensify it, and immediately they had some problems. And that's what we have today, and we have to do something. And you say you can solve it with organic agriculture. Yes, to a certain extent, I'm not against that, but not in all cases. And therefore, as I said, I'm undogmatic and allow many other forms of sustainable agriculture. But in the other thing, what you said, I agree completely with you. The food is too cheap. We have to internalize the external costs. Completely agreement.
Thank you.
Yeah, I would
one
like to
last word.
So that's not an experience of FIAN, but we experienced when working with smallholders, changing monoculture was quite positive in keeping out these effects that came just because it was a monoculture for cocoa trees. They didn't have any shade, and it was easy to include beans, which will fertilize the soil, and that was a good good for further animals like pigs. So you have to think more complement and not in these big business dimensions. Yeah, I guess even small systems are good, and maybe there should be also thoughts how to make them bigger, like developing associations or promoting associations, and to give them also a big power on the market.
Thank you. I would like to invite you to participate in the discussion, and I would ask you to keep short, put short questions, because there are many of you who want to participate. Please tell us your name and maybe your organization and to whom you want to direct your question. I saw the first hand rising there, then you, and then you in the first one.
Please. Thank you very much. Is that okay without microphone?
Yes.
My name is Heike Hoffler. I work for GIZ, so I'm a colleague of Stephan Krall, but I'm also academic scholar in the area of poverty research. So actually mine is rather a comment, probably two, but I'll be short. One is, I really enjoy the discussion, but I would like to add a bit of the complexity of the topic we're talking about. I have a fear that what comes from the podium is a bit like as if we had an opportunity to create a utopia, and if there was a black and a white. But what we're talking about is terribly complex, and as much as I'm happy to agree with with Hans Herren on many issues are back to differ in one. When you say there's one point of leverage, and I think what I would like to encourage the discussion is there are many points, a complex system, and what is a smallholder farm in Indonesia is not the same like in Bavaria, it's not the same like in Patagonia, it's not the same. People differ, systems differ, and there is many more points than one to leverage and more systems and models to work out. And I think it forms a better debate to really be specific to what's the problem and where. And while talking about the right to food and nutrition, I had the privilege to be part of a group last year when the German government stepped up efforts for global nutrition. I had the privilege to travel to some countries in Africa to find out how to best promote nutrition for women and small children. And when thinking of these mothers in Zambia, for example, where the nutritious status of women and children is really deplorable, I think the least debate they would have wanted to have is about whether to use a pesticide or not. What they would need is, instead of only maize, some beans. If those beans are there, let them protect them and let them harvest them and feed them to the children and mothers to improve the nutritious status first. Care for some of the other aspects later, and not do as if we could, I mean, what you suggest to fix the internalization of the external costs, yes, but while waiting for those researchers to solve that problem, let's be a bit pragmatic. Thank you.
Thank you. That was not just a quite short question, but an interesting input. Thank you so much. Let us collect 2 more questions and then we come back to the panel, please.
My name is Gehrke. I'm working for IFOM, Organics International. And I would like to address, we don't have to wait. And I'd like to invite Mr. Krall to read a book about the myth of safe pesticides. There are no safe pesticides in this world. My president, Andre Loy from Australia, has just written a book about collecting scientific evidence about that pesticides are causing damage at all levels. For human health, for environment, for the soil, we are in the year of soil, by the way, and so forth. I'm happy I'm in Bonn. You're welcome to visit me. I give you the book. And I discuss it with you frankly, because when we come to the true cost accounting, and you have it in your hands. You have it in your hands, really, to do it now. Why you're not arguing now for putting taxes on those pesticides? Now, here in Germany, all over the world, it's our chance. It's only a part of the complex system, but it will help a lot. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
My name is Richard Sikora. I'm a professor emeritus at the University of Bonn. I'm a Mississippi Rhinelander. That's the accent you're hearing. It's not Rhinish. And there were 3 things said: small farmers, organic agriculture, and site-specific agriculture. I work in a project, I have a project in Southern Africa that deals with the SADC countries, Southern African Development Community. There's 13 countries in this group. It's a site-specific project working in the semi-arid and the humid arid tropics. They have 1/10 of the yield that you have in a normal situation. They're getting, let's say, a half a ton of cereals and grains and beans per hectare versus 10 tons. They have 70% of the soils are degraded. They are impacted by climate change and will be more severely impacted by climate change over the next 10, 50, every year it's going to get worse. They have major migration from the land to the cities. Underproduction. They have no fertilizers. That means it's already organic. No. And all the governments are almost organic. Okay, you can debate that. I can debate. They have 1 kilo to 2 kilos of fertilizer per hectare. That's, for me, almost organic. But the question is, they have no money. They're some of the poorest countries in the world. That means the governments cannot fund infrastructure, the control of post-harvest. How are you going to solve the problem in that specific area? You're talking about the world. Pesticides are bad, and this is bad, and that's good. That's not the problem. The problem is, how do you feed those people in those countries under those conditions? And there's no one answer. And it's not going to be organic, and it's not going to be necessarily pesticides. It's definitely not going to be GMOs. But these are site-specific areas. And you're talking global. Pesticides are bad, GMOs are bad, organic agriculture is good, commercial agriculture is bad. That's ridiculous. There's problems there and they have to be solved, and these people are starving. And it's going to get worse.
Okay.
Thank you.
I'm not the accidental tourist in Africa. 27 years non-stop. I've seen this, and we have, when I was head of ICIPE, we developed methodologies to actually quadruple, up to quintuple, even 10 times more yield in sustainable maize bean systems. And they could be duplicated everywhere. So it comes drought, comes flood, they are actually very stable. It's been shown, there are now tens of thousands of farmers using this. But again, we could promote this much more if we were to actually start to look, what are the farmers doing, and take that and multiply it. The push-pull method, for example, which has been developed at ICIPE over the years, it works. It works in many, many different environments. Is it being promoted? The big money still goes into promoting fertilizer, a la Malawi. You see what happens after a while, there's no more money for subsidies. Everything goes back to square one. Instead of teaching the farmers to do sustainable practices, they don't have to be organic certified. That's why I say, look, let's look at the bigger picture, what's sustainable. I've said this at the very beginning. The whole solution is actually in the soil fertility management. So you need to put organic matter back into the soil. Exactly, they've been degraded. But I was not long ago in a debate with Mike Mack from Syngenta in Hanoi. And he had the guts to say that, oh, yeah, you look, Africa is all organic, that's why they are hungry. They don't use inputs. What a nonsense. And you repeated that also. You say that it's organic because they don't do anything. No, organic farming is actually a very complicated way of farming. Needs a lot of knowledge. So where is the money? Where is the research to help those farmers do it? It is not that we're going to produce more in Europe or in America and feed these people down there. No, let's train the farmer, give them the technologies they need, mechanization, how they can improve the soil, make them again use a crop rotation system, stop growing maize like crazy. And who is pushing this? International ag research and the international community. Just grow more maize and eat maize and shut up. No, this is bad. So I think we need to think about this. You know, and again, I have the experience that it's not only to what you said? Oh, I was
the leverage point.
The leverage point, yeah. It's not only about the money and how to, but here in the West, that's the way we're going to go to sustainable agriculture. In the South, again, they won't have to compete with cheap products from this end, you see? So they can do their own stuff. Because even today, they are huge unfair competition between the overproduction in Europe, in North America, which floods the markets all the time, still even today. So that's what we need to stop, you see? So if they're given the means to produce, and again, there's many leverage points, but one of the key ones, certainly to change things here and to stop this whole meat consumption, that's the one part of the equation. Sure, there are many different things we need to do. I don't think I said there's only one thing. But as a leverage point, at least here, you cannot change things unless the price is right. And I would, again, argue with Richard, my good friend here, on what is needed. Sure, we understand it's very complicated. But if we don't start to invest in capacity development in the right direction, in making sure people have access, again, to land races, which are well adapted to local conditions, because we have land races which actually out-yield hybrids in the push-pull system. It's possible. And you know what? These varieties can defend themselves against the pests and diseases because that's how farmers have bred them over the years. The seed has already a lot of potential, but I think it's a lot, I think, needs to be leveraged in the soil. So soil science and soil biology, to me, I think, is really a big part of solving that problem of sustainable agriculture in the South. And a healthy plant needs much less pesticides, herbicides, pesticides and fungicides, and can withstand some damage. It doesn't really hurt them. So again, you know, we know all these things, and I think we know where the different points are. So the question is, you know, are we going to stop? Somebody mentioned the vested interests of standing in the way of transformation and do it the right way, or are we going to let us led around by the nose by a few companies which you know exactly what I'm talking about, in this world. I think we need to get off those shackles of a few, and I think look at the interests of the many.
Thank you. Would you like to answer, to tell us what you're going to do with your
book.
present?
Meanwhile, I read the book.
Okay,
and I'm
thank you.
No.
Okay, no, good.
No, but exactly what you said now, that's what we call integrated plant production and integrated pest management. So a healthy plant needs less pesticides, for sure, that's it. And that's why we look at the agro-ecosystem. But as I said, I can repeat it again and again, I'm not dogmatic. If I am in West Africa, many soils lack phosphate and I need fertilizer. I can't do it with green manure or with compost. And if you talk about organic fertilizer, where come all the animals from? On the one hand, you say not so many animals because meat needs a lot of fodder, etc., etc. But on the other hand, organic agriculture needs manure. And where does it come from? So in some areas, it is recommended to use fertilizer. And it is in some cases recommended to use pesticides. And I can say it again, it's, you have to decide it's site-specific and context-specific. Site-specific means I have to look at the agro-ecosystem, soil, water, etc. And context-specific means I have to look at the political and societal context. And then I can decide which way of producing crops is recommended in this specific case. And not one fits all.
Thank you. You wanted to participate with your question.
And when you speak about productivity, I ask you whether you can think about an organic fertilizer, which is very innovative and has no problems with the water. And the other question is, you mentioned already water resources. I worked very long time for the Water Association here in Germany, and we had very early, we recognized the pesticide problem, and we know that we have not the wonderful world here in Germany as it is elsewhere. So I think it's time now to change the world and to use fertilizer which are organic to rise up the productivity on one hand, and to look of the water resources, and this is a public task, I think. This is the challenge. We have to look, whether we look at Africa, that big companies take over the landscape and the water resources, and this is a problem that the farmers, that they have not the resource to bring the water to the food.
Thank you. Is there any other question? Yes, please.
There's no question. Respected Dr. Hans, Limpak, Srinivasanji, Dr. Stephan, I am from the world's second largest country, India. I am architect. I have been here to meet my son, who is working in Siemens Management Consultancy as Senior Management Consultant. This is my great opportunity to attend this conference because of Srinivasanji. I have seen him that he is a personality of India, and I entered the house. All of you are speaking about the European countries. As I said that I am from India, the second largest country in the world. 125 crore is the population. Dr. Hans has spoken about the increase of cost of the food. We can afford to pay, you can afford to pay more for the cost of the food. Dr. Stephan has spoken about the quality of the food. The organic fertilizer should be used to avoid the pesticide, use of pesticides, to keep the people in good health. Dr. Stephan can afford to use the organic fertilizer to have the good quality of the food, because as I have studied, the population of Germany, which was in 1950, will also remain constant in 2050. In India and China, the population is increasing. We are concerned with the quantum of the food or crops. We should find out the ways to increase the agriculture produce in India and China so that the ample opportunity should be there. Recently, a year back, our new government has been formed and Shri Narendra Modi has become the Prime Minister of India. He has invited the countries of the various countries of the world to come to India and make in India. You are advanced country, developed country, you should produce in India, make in India, the quality of the fertilizer and the agriculture implements which can increase the quantum of the crops and add low hazard to the health, as Dr. Stephan is insisting upon. At the same time,
I would ask you to come to an end because I think there are some more people who
yes, I will request all of you, the developing countries, to establish their research labs to produce agricultural implements in India so that you should help India and China to increase the production of the crop, keeping into view the increasing population of those countries. Thank you.
Thank you very much. One next question and then we come back to the panel. Please.
I have a question for Dr. Stephan. My concern is agriculture, the proportion of agriculture in Europe is not more than 10%. So in sub-Saharan Africa, in many parts of Asia, in many parts of Latin America, livelihood depends on agriculture. The moment we ignore that, feeding the future generation, the question of who should feed will be under the question mark. It won't be answered. No one will answer that part. It doesn't matter one person. What matters is, what if we can promote the best practices? If you take the case in point in Ethiopia, we are promoting the organic farming. If you can empower them, if you can let them to stand on their own feet, that can be scalable, that can be appreciated. That can contribute for the whole population. As the guy said, India is the second largest population, China is the first. So if you can empower those who are producers, those who are highly dependent on agriculture, that the primary exporter to Europe, what the agricultural products. So the base is there. We have to enable the base. We have to cooperate. The macro level issues are always affecting the micro level issues. You don't need to speak about the macro level issues. It has to be integrated in a way that it can contribute in different parts. So my point is, we don't need to, of course the leverage point is many. We can promote the large scale agriculture, that's one part. We have to again appreciate the organic farming issues, despite of the challenges. So we don't need to look for one extreme. We can compromise in a way that it can contribute. That's my point. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would you like to answer directly, Dr. Krall?
It was more a comment than the question, no?
Yes,
you said we don't have to think in extremes. So I mean that's what I say. And what is important, if we talk not about Europe or America, but about developing countries, is the political will of a government to promote agriculture. And I've been recently, as many of my colleagues, in Ethiopia, and there is a political will because the government has recognized that agriculture is the economic basis of the country. And if a government is supporting the development of agriculture, many things can happen. And then you can analyze your agricultural system, and then you can decide what type of agriculture in which region you promote. And in northern Ethiopia, there is a big problem with erosion and lack of water and things like that. And so they promote types of agriculture, water harvesting agriculture types. And in the south, they have very productive soils. They promote highly productive agriculture with mechanization, etc. So I mean, that is what I consider necessary, to look what can I do in which part of my country. And if there is not the political will, you can't do anything. We, with our projects from GIZ, we can help if there is a political will behind. But if there is no political will behind, we cannot solve the problems in developing countries.
Thank you. Hans-Herren.
Political will, you know, that's an interesting euphemism somehow to say, you know, who is actually influencing that political will. If you look at the big initiatives, global initiatives to produce more food. Now, so, you know, the G8 has started this global alliance for security in Africa. So look at who is in there and what are they promoting, okay? Very simple. The old stuff, Green Revolution, over again. Totally wrong. And who is inside? Gates Foundation, Monsanto, Pioneer, Ayara. So what type of agriculture you expect will come out of that one? I mean, it is not what is needed. And because we know that if you do it the other way, you can do it sustainably. But what needs to be done, the number one thing we have to do now is to go back to the major report on agriculture, because the International Assessment of Agricultural Knowledge, Science and Technology for Development, ISAD report. Agriculture at the Crossroads, published in 2008, signed by 59 countries. Is it being implemented? No, pushed aside. The NGOs are the only ones. The speaker of the UN for the right to food, Olivier de Schutter, didn't miss one opportunity to say, look, if we need to change agriculture, go back and read that book, 2,000 pages. Summary of 20 pages for the decision maker. Have they read it? No. Not even here, not even in my own country. People do not go back to the major report, which says, what do we need to do? It's there. And that is actually moving to an agroecological manner of doing agriculture. So it's there. Now, one recommendation which was said in there, which is extremely important, is that every country needs to do an assessment of its agriculture and food system in order to understand where they are, and then to make a plan for the future for the next 30, 40 years. Now, which country has done this so far? Null, none. And it's because by my own foundation, Millennium Institute, with some Swiss funding and others, we actually have 3 pilots going on now in Senegal, in Kenya, in Ethiopia. And you know how this is done now? It's not that the people from Washington and Berlin, Bern, and go down there and say what needs to be done. No, we bring the people together. The government, the private sector, they're all invited, development partners, academia, and farmers, farming organizations. Everybody has something to do with the food system. We all sit around the table, map out the food system and agriculture of that particular country, and then this is then not only it's quantified and people can play scenarios. Everybody is there. Everybody says, okay, what do we want to do? They decide. We don't decide for them. We just give them the tools. We educate them on how to do that. So now they can actually play scenarios, see what would happen if we go the way, the Yara Monsanto way, let's say, or we do something else. There are many different ways to do agriculture for the future. So let them decide. And let the farmers decide also, the farmer association, not only the representative of a big company and the Minister of Agriculture, because that's exactly what's happening now. So no, let people know. Maybe they decide to go that way, but then it's their decision. They know what they did, and so that's what we need to do. So if anything, GIZ and SDC and many other of these aid organizations, what they should do is to help people make their own decision. Give them the tool to think about their country, to analyze it and see, okay, if they want to go that way, let them go that way. But it's their decision, not ours. But right now, we are not there, and we need to go there. I think that is essential, that they make their own decisions. But we need to stop interfering, and also interfere in the markets, as we do right now, with our agriculture, which is actually interfering negatively with agriculture in developing countries, even today. So we know that. I mean, how can the CAP here have a built-in surplus production of milk, for example? Based on again, I said it again, you know, on importing huge amount of feed from the other side of the world at a huge environmental cost, health cost, human cost. I think we need to come to our senses here. And I think we can, if we start to look at our own system, the same way as the people in developing countries look at their system, and involve everybody in the discussion. He said to stop being a discussion on the four eyes as it is today, and it has to be open and transparent. And that's the decision-making process, I think, which will solve many of our problems in the world.
Thank you very much. Yes,
but Hans,
Yeah.
I think the world is not only black and white. There's not only on the one hand the ISTAT report and on the other hand Yara and Bayer Crop Science and Monsanto. There are many colors in between. And that's what we need to use. It doesn't help us, you know, we are working more than 3 or 4 decades in this business, and it doesn't help to complain always how bad the world is. We have to see where are entry points to change frame conditions and to help people. That is important, and not to stick to one specific opinion and say if the world doesn't accept that, it is bad.
I exactly mentioned that people need to decide, but we need to give them the tools and the opportunity. That's what they don't have.
I see one more a lot of more questions, but we should come we should come to an end of the discussion right now here, and you have all the chance to get into a deeper dialogue afterwards when we are all invited to a little cocktail. So I would like you to finish this debate with one or two sentences about, you mentioned how inputs and frameworks should work, about the SDGs, which are being developed right now, and which role should agriculture, sustainable agriculture, play in the SDGs? That I would like to ask you for your final remark on this aspect.
Okay, that's a quite specific question. I guess they have to play an intense and very high-level role, for sure. As I stated, they have to be combined with poverty eradiction to target really women, smallholders, people who are not in the state of helping themselves, so who need knowledge. So not the top of the society should be supported by fundings, but yeah, not forget the smallholders, the forgotten people, the poor.
Thank you. Hans Herren, the SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, which are aimed at not only at the developing countries, but also at the developed countries. So what's your idea?
That's actually, to me, this is our last chance to get it right. The SDGs are not perfect, but what they have, which are very good, is they're universal. So it will apply as well here, in my own country, wherever you go, they will apply. This is very, very good. Again, they're not perfect, but I think that if we were to really take this seriously and act on what's in there and not try to change them before September or in mid-September in New York, I think we can move forward. In agriculture in particular, I know, and we have been working now on this with a number of organizations for more than 2 years, since Rio, even before Rio, to have language in there. And there's a lot of language about smallholder farmers. There's a lot of language about sustainable agriculture. So I think the transformation needed. So there's very good language in there, I think, also on sustainable consumption and production. So I think we need to take this very seriously, because as I said, this is our last chance. If we miss that opportunity, start to mess about the details, no. We need to get moving on this. And what we need to do in particular is to start not to ask for more money, because that's now the whole thing. Oh, where is the money? We need to change the way we do things today and start to do them differently. Not do the same stuff as today and add money to do the good thing. This is what's going to happen. Discussion in Addis Ababa coming soon. I already heard it. More money. No. Maybe we need some more. But first, let's reassess what we do with our money today, how we use it, and how